New York City, a place where dreams are born and just as often broken. The city never sleeps, and its streets are filled with millions of stories, some of hope, others of heartbreak. But amidst the towering skyscrapers and the endless hum of life, it's easy to become invisible. For James, a man who had fallen on hard times, this invisibility had become his harsh reality. James wasn't always homeless. He had a family once, a wife, 2 kids, a house with a little yard in Queens. He used to work as a mechanic, his hands covered in grease but his heart full of pride. But life has a way of throwing curveballs. A recession hit, jobs dried up, and James was laid off. Shortly after, his wife was diagnosed with a terminal illness. Medical bills piled up, their savings vanished, and before he knew it, James was left alone with nothing but memories of a life that felt like someone else's dream. Years passed, and James found himself living on the streets of Manhattan. Every day was a battle, scraping together enough for a meal, finding shelter from the bitter cold, and above all, surviving the crushing loneliness. His days blended together into an endless grey, and the people rushing past him barely spared him a glance. But one day was different. It was a particularly frigid winter afternoon. The wind howled through the concrete canyons, cutting through layers of clothing like icy blades. James sat on the sidewalk near Fifth Avenue, holding a cardboard sign that read, "A little kindness can change a life. God bless." His breath formed small clouds as he shivered, his thin jacket no match for the bitter cold. As he sat there, head bowed, he heard the low rumble of an approaching engine. He looked up to see a sleek black SUV pulling up to the curb. The car was pristine, its windows tinted so dark they reflected the surrounding skyscrapers. James didn't think much of it at first. Fancy cars were nothing new in this part of town. Then the door opened. A man stepped out, and the murmurs in the crowd began instantly. James squinted against the sunlight, trying to make out the figure. His heart skipped a beat as recognition set in. The man was tall, his suit impeccably tailored, his red tie unmistakable. It was Donald Trump. The bustling street seemed to pause. People stopped in their tracks, their heads turning toward the unexpected scene. Phones emerged from pockets, and the sound of cameras clicking filled the air. The crowd buzzed with whispers. "Is that really him? What's he doing here?" James's pulse quickened. He wasn't sure what compelled him, but before he could second-guess himself, he called out, his voice trembling. "Sir, do you have $1 to spare?" Trump stopped mid-step, his sharp gaze locking onto James. The murmurs grew louder, and the crowd edged closer, eager to see what would happen next. $1? Trump repeated, his voice carrying the weight of authority. James nodded, his throat dry. "Yes, sir, just $1. I'd like to get something warm to drink." For a moment, Trump said nothing. He reached into the pocket of his overcoat, his expression unreadable. James braced himself for rejection. It wouldn't be the first time someone had ignored him. But what happened next was beyond anything he could have imagined. Trump pulled out a crisp $100 bill. The crowd gasped audibly, the sound rippling through the gathered onlookers like a wave. He held the bill out to James, his face serious. "I don't carry singles," Trump said, a faint smirk playing on his lips. James's hands shook as he reached out to take the money. His voice cracked as he whispered, "Thank you. Thank you. So much, sir." But Trump wasn't done. He crouched down slightly, bringing himself to James's level, and his tone grew earnest. "This isn't just for a coffee," he said. "This is for a fresh start. Promise me you'll use it wisely." James nodded fervently, tears streaming down his face. "I will. I swear I will." Trump reached into his coat once more and pulled out a business card. "Take this," he said, handing it to James. The card bore the name of a foundation that specialised in helping homeless individuals get back on their feet, providing housing, job training, and emotional support. "There tomorrow," Trump instructed firmly. "Tell them I sent you, they'll help you." The crowd erupted into applause, some people shouting words of encouragement, others wiping away tears. Trump stood, his presence commanding, yet he didn't linger to soak in the adulation. He simply gave James a small nod before returning to his car. As the SUV drove away, James sat there clutching the $100 bill and the business card as though they were lifelines. The weight of what had just happened began to sink in, and for the first time in years, James felt something he hadn't dared to feel in a long time: hope. The next morning, James went to the address on the card. True to Trump's word, the foundation welcomed him with open arms. They provided him with clean clothes, a warm meal, and a plan to rebuild his life. Over the following months, James transformed. He attended job training programs, found stable employment, and eventually moved into his own apartment. The viral video of his encounter with Trump inspired thousands of others to lend a hand to those in need. Donations poured into the foundation, enabling them to help even more people like James. As for James, he often reflected on that cold winter day. One man's simple yet profound act of kindness had turned his life around. And for Trump, it wasn't about the cameras or the headlines. It was about the principle that a small gesture can spark a monumental change. If this story touched your heart, don't forget to like, share, and comment. Let's spread the message. That kindness has the power to transform lives. Together, we can make the world a better place.